Here's Gilgeous-Alexander. McCollum staying with him. Spins, gets inside. Left-handed off the glass. Oh, what a sweet move.
Giddy, tough spot. Backdoor. What a pass. What a play. And J-Dub picks the pocket of Trae Young. He'll take it himself.
This is Udart. You're listening to the Uncontested.
What is up, and welcome to the Uncontested Podcast Trade Deadline Day Edition. I'm your host for the night, Nick, joined by Teddy P.
Hey, I don't even have a good intro for this one. Exciting day.
All days with no intro, Taylor. Also joined by Jacob Niffen.
What's up?
We are proudly part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. When it comes to YouTube, like, subscribe. We'd appreciate it very much. The channel is growing, and we want you to grow with us. Fellas, to start this off, I kind of want to give everybody a lens of the trade deadline from the uncontested point of view. I want to walk through where we were, what we were doing, initial thoughts for each of these deals today. Before we do that, though, we talked about it a little bit last night. I want to get your guys' perspective on what you thought entering the day. So starting with when you woke up this morning, unless you woke up really, really late, nothing had happened yet. Things did get rolling early in the morning, but when we woke up, at least for me, no deals had happened yet. So entering the day, you wake up, grab your phone. First thing you do is check for trades, nothing. What are you actually expecting the Thunder to do?
Like I said last night on the show, what I expected didn't happen. I thought we would get a Poku trade, and that might just be at Poku in a couple of seconds or something like that. Poku's still on this team, boys. So the thin towers survive another deadline.
Lives on.
But that is what I expected. I didn't want to get my hopes up that something big would happen. So I was aiming kind of small. I was aiming like, maybe it's a Poku trade. Maybe it's a Trey Mann trade. Maybe it's the two of them together. Now that the trade has happened, it's like, oh, yeah, of course they were going to make that deal. But I was expecting a smaller move.
I think for me, mine was even more like league-wide because I wake up, like to your point, Nick, and the first thing I do is check for the rumors because I knew all those people were going to. Poor Jacob. He predicted all these comments in the chat. For those of you not on the live stream, Jacob's not wearing a hat. I think you look great, Jacob.
Dan came on and said, we lost Trey and Niffen's hair on the same night. No, one was lost a lot earlier, Dan, but that's okay. I am embracing the baldness. It's all right.
Looks great.
It does.
So I checked for the rumors immediately. And the first one, basically all of them I saw. The first one was Chris Haynes saying that DeJounte Murray, the Hawks, and the Pelicans are no longer in the conversation. He's likely to stay. Mark Stein dropped a piece. Literally every single, this wasn't like a knock. This isn't a knock on Stein, but every single player he touched on, Kyle Kuzma, Murray, there's like a couple others. Like, yeah, they're most likely to stay with their teams. And then I saw Michael Scotto was on there. He even mentioned the Thunder and mentioned he went through all 30 teams. And so like the Thunder, most rival GMs expect them to be patient and wait until the offseason. So I think I even tweeted out, like, I expect it to be a very boring deadline. I know there's like a lot of national media heads like Bill Simmons and Russillo who were so disappointed that they didn't get the all-star like flashy trade, but it was a very busy day of trades, a very busy deadline.
Yeah. For me,
go ahead. Jacob. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No. You go first.
So I said last night, for the record, I lost a bet to Silva. Silva said 100% chance a trade happens. An Oklahoma City trade, that is. And it sure did. We'll get to that in a second. I said 60, and really the majority of that 60, like I said last night, was I thought it would be some kind of unique trade, like a kick the can down the road kind of trade or a helping facilitate something else. And that did happen as well. So I was technically right, but I didn't bet on that.
Trade was certainly facilitated.
Oh my goodness gracious. We should kick you off the pod. But one of the first, I don't know, was Buddy first or was Oklahoma City's trade first?
Buddy was first.
Okay. So Buddy Hield kind of kicks things off. And as these things go, it seems like these trades come in waves. It'll be like 3 or 4 at once, then it gets kind of quiet, and then a couple more come. So Buddy's the first trade to Philly. Makes sense. Philly needs a shooter. Philly needs more scoring than just Tyrese Maxey, especially with Joel Embiid out. And then we get a notification. I think the first one I saw said that the team, Oklahoma City, was like closing in on a deal for Gordon Hayward. So nothing around the package. So maybe we pause there. Did you guys see that initial tweet before the package was announced? And if so, did you have any like guesses or hypothesis around what the trade was?
So a little peek behind the curtain. I have, for those of you who are like new to the pod, I've been a teacher for the past 10 years. I would say, guys, 5 years ago, I started just burning personal leave on this day because it's the most unproductive day of the work year for me by far. I just don't do anything. I just scroll my phone. Whenever I was a teacher, today was video day. Like 100%, you just come in and a video plays and you take some notes. Like Niffin's going to be on his phone scrolling the deadline day. So I just decided to start taking time off. I'm not in the classroom anymore. Today, I'm still in education though. Today I had a meeting with some partners down at OU for some stuff we were doing. My meeting was from 9 to 10. And so I said,
and for context, the trade dropped at 9:43, I think it was.
Yep.
So I said, I'm going to go to my meeting because that's important, taking PTO the rest of the day. I am in a meeting with a dean of a college and like a handful of other people discussing like this event we're planning. And my phone vibrates multiple times. I'm like, what the hell? And I pull out my phone and I just looked at it real quick and I saw Shams, Hayward, Oklahoma City. And I was like, this son of a bitch, Sam Presti, you couldn't have waited like 30 minutes, my guy.
When was the last time he made a trade on deadline day that wasn't up until like the buzzer, you know?
Yeah, like last year, the Darius Baisley deal came across around like noon because I went and got Brahms right after. I remember that vividly.
You'll never forget the Darius Baisley trade. Imagine of all the trades.
It was time. And that Brahms slapped too. So, but yeah, I was just like, bro, come on, Sam. I took PTO at 10. You trade this son of a bitch at 9:43.
That was one of the first things I obviously we were talking about it quickly in our uncontested group message that we have. And then I immediately added Jacob. I was like, this dude took off after 10 to be able to enjoy the trade deadline. And of course, Presti makes a trade before he's technically off. I was not expecting it either. I'd gotten to work, kind of gotten settled in. And then usually about 9:30, I go and grab coffee. And so I actually walked across the street to one of my favorite spots. Like, this seems like a good time to do that. I'm literally walking across the street and my phone starts blowing up too. And I pull it up and it's like, oh my God. So I'm just standing outside of this coffee shop like an idiot, just scrolling through my phone, retweeting and like messaging you guys. So that's how I found out about it.
So Silva obviously didn't make it to the bathroom because it was a bit earlier than he expected. But Taylor, did you see the initial tweet before the package was announced, or was your first time seeing it when the framework was already kind of out there?
No, I was lucky and I saw it like literally about a minute after Shams tweet, the initial tweet that the Thunder were closing in on a deal to acquire Gordon Hayward. And then we just kind of waited for a bit. And
so
then,
did you try guessing, or did your brain not process it fast enough? Like what was going through your head?
Like, oh my gosh, this is actually happening. We actually discussed this on the podcast. I can't believe it. This never happens. Kind of to your point last night, Nick, on our group pod, you're like, it's going to be somebody off the radar, like Jock Landale. And I totally agreed. It's like, this one actually makes sense. And we've been talking about it a little bit. But by the time I had like kind of shared tweets with you all and had a bunch of group texts and stuff going, my phone's blowing up. That's when Woj comes in with some additional details. And as you all know, are well aware, it was not the full details.
Yeah, sure.
He was saying they're going to acquire Gordon Hayward around a package of Trey Mann and Davis Bertans. Yep. And so like Thunder Twitter, all of us are just like, oh my gosh, that's all it took. Like, what a trade. Yeah. And then obviously there's some additional details.
I think that's an interesting thing to discuss. I think everything's relative, right? A player's production, you're going to say he's good or bad, generally relative to his contract. Like a max guy, you expect more than a minimum guy. Same with trade packages. Like I think, as Taylor alluded to, for those that haven't seen this or maybe just like saw it all late, what ultimately was sent out for Gordon Hayward was not the initial package that was reported. I think if initially the entire package was reported, maybe some of the sentiment would be different because that's all you know. Like that's what it took. Whereas when it's a smaller package and then all of a sudden later it's like, but wait, there's more. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe I don't
Happens
like
to me
this
all the
deal as
time,
much.
Nick.
Good grief. I can't say anything on the pod. So initial deal, as Taylor said, was Bertans and Trey Mann, which felt like nothing. Like Trey Mann, to be fair, I think he's one of those guys that, like, in Oklahoma City covering him, he's a guy that we kind of knew was traded, but maybe the other teams, other fan bases, it's like, oh, this former first round pick, 23 years old, that just turned 23. And the highlights you see on Twitter is him dunking on people and step back, breaking ankles. He probably is an attractive piece to other fan bases. And I'm sure Charlotte fans are loving that he's coming. Initial package, smaller, comes out later. So I guess for more context, the money doesn't work with just Bertans and Mann. So we were all speculating like Poku, or around the same time, Dallas was trading for Daniel Gafford, but they needed additional draft compensation. And it was reported that Oklahoma City was going to help. So you started like to have this idea of like, maybe that's like a 3 or a 4 team trade. And that's how you're going to get around the money not working. Maybe like someone from Washington's coming to Oklahoma City, or maybe someone from Charlotte's coming to Oklahoma City, or maybe one of the pieces. Like there's all these different things going through our head. I think everyone thought big picture was probably Poku, though. Ends up being Micic. So we no longer have the Meech. I think Jacob
Big
tweeted that.
Meech. Pour one out for Big Meech, folks.
Big Meech.
I think I'm Big Meech.
Him and 2 second-round picks, right? That's the total package for Gordon Hayward. So I want to hear both of y'all's thoughts. Initial package, what's going through your head? Follow up, the additional stuff. Did that change your opinion, or do you still think it's a great deal? What were your thoughts both times you saw those tweets drop?
I was surprised Micic was involved. That caught me a little off guard. I get it. And ultimately, you traded a rotation player for a rotation player, right? Like only one rotation player went out. They also threw in 2 seconds. Nick, I know you're like the draft guy of the podcast. I literally could not give less of a shit about trading 2 seconds in this deal. You're never going to pick 22 second rounders. So if that's what greases the wheels to get it done, if somebody else was after Hayward or they weren't going to buy him out, if he didn't get traded and you needed to throw 2 seconds in there, like that's whatever to me.
Yeah.
Trey Mann, great kid, really great kid. Enjoyed his basketball skill. New dad, shout out to Trey Mann.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just very clear that he was buried on the bench and was not going to get the opportunity. And so I'm glad he's getting that burn. But on court production, you are not losing anything in Trey. Now, locker room, you're losing some stuff. Like Trey, I think, was beloved in that locker room. I think back to Shea hitting the game winner in Denver and Trey tweeting, God knew Michael Jordan was my favorite player, so he let me play with him.
Yeah.
Just like that's like a God tier tweet from a teammate.
Him pretending to fly the team plane. Like, he's
First team all vibes.
Yes, 100%.
J-Dub tweeted out almost immediately after, like, a tricky Trey with the frowny face, like absolutely beloved.
So it doesn't really change my opinion on the trade. It's actually a smart little, and we'll get into this in a second. It's a smart little business move too.
Right.
You got off of Bertans' money and Voss's money, and now you enter next offseason with like $40 million in cap space, which, for the record, like the most the Thunder's ever spent in free agency was Patrick freaking Patterson. So I don't think they're going deep sea fishing in
It's not just
agency.
Free agents.
For sure.
Exactly.
We'll get into that.
We'll get into that. Yeah, absolutely.
But it didn't really change my opinion on the move too much, to be clear, Nick.
Okay.
I think taking a step back, when I saw Micic was the one included in the trade, I was pretty surprised, just because I think Micic is
He's been playing good too.
Yeah,
man.
right. And one thing that we mentioned is like Micic obviously has the IQ, he has the skill, but the speed of the game, the speed of the NBA game, the physicality is something that he was still trying to adjust to. And he's been playing really well. He was playing really well off the bench. Those lineups with him and Dub were some of the best bench lineups in comparison to like when Giddey and Dub shared the floor. I was pretty surprised. Like maybe it's just the sweetener that the Hornets needed to get over the finish line. But then there was like this interim period, Nick, and you were all over this. All three of us, actually. Jacob was done at that point with work, and we were talking about it. Like, is Grant Williams somehow going to get brought into this? because Grant Williams was, mentioned to be traded. I was like, man, if you can get Gordon Hayward and Grant Williams, how crazy would that be? And I was on trade machines trying to make it all work. But in the end, like y'all mentioned, there were 2 separate trades. And just kind of like what Jacob alluded to, and as we'll get into more specifically, it makes a lot of sense getting off Micic's guaranteed money in this offseason. I think he's like $7 million this season, something similar next season, and to create that cap space because there's so much you can do with it. That is the reason he was included in this trade.
Yeah, not much more to add to that. Like when you zoom out on the trade, it was Trey Mann, who not in the rotation. Awesome.
Wasn't going to get extended.
Wasn't going to get extended. I think he's a guy that when you look at the guys that don't play, he's probably the one guy that, like, if Presti came to me and said, who's one guy that doesn't play that you'd love to see play more? Probably be Trey, just because he's the fun, flashy style of play. Not in the rotation, great player. I think that it shouldn't be discounted how good of an asset he actually was. Like, again, covering the team and like him not being in the rotation, we probably undervalued him a bit, but being the former first round pick and just like all the things we mentioned, I think he actually was a pretty solid chip. I also want to say this. I don't think Gordon Hayward was ever getting bought out. If that's what it took to get Gordon Hayward and there's other teams interested, he was never going to get bought out. I think that's a guy that, and if he did, he wasn't going to come to Oklahoma City, probably. I'll say that. So I think it was an awesome trade. So it was Mann, it was Bertans, also not in the rotation, also a very attractive contract who we'd been saying was basically expiring with like the 5.25 next year guaranteed. Now you got a lot more expiring, so it's a better cap move for KC. Vasa, like you guys said, had been playing great. But a lot of guys play great in short stretches. And we have short memories. Like he could have some bad games after the All-Star break or like fall out of the rotation again, and all of a sudden we're saying like, oh, Vasa's not an NBA player anymore. It's
not to interrupt you, but like we've talked a lot about Josh Giddey being targeted in the playoffs simply because he's such a core piece of this team, and we think highly of Josh as an individual and player. Yeah, we didn't talk about Vasa in that context just because he's not on that same level. Like, can you imagine how he would have been targeted in the playoffs as well?
Totally,
defensively for sure.
Yeah, defensively,
and then agree with Jacob. 2 seconds is not anything I'm worried about. I want to talk about Hayward. We talked a lot about outgoing to get Gordon. I want to talk about what he brings, the injury stuff. Go ahead, Jacob.
Before we get there, can I say something real quick?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. I've been thinking about this. So I don't know if you guys have done this. I have been listening to like some national pods, and I was like watching ESPN today, and we retweeted some jackass from TikTok that Clemente had posted about. Everybody upset that the Thunder didn't go get a big. I just want to address that for a minute. Number one, I think Jalen Williams, J. Will, has been playing really good. But number two, just some of the stuff I've heard today just shows me that people like have no clue what the hell they're talking about. I was listening to a national podcast from a very big sports media company that's not ESPN, just ripping into the Thunder. They knew what they needed to go get, and they didn't do it. This is, I know they want to see what they got in the playoffs, but your window isn't open forever. They got a chance this year. They decided to not go get a big man, which is clearly what they needed. Like, what are they going to do when they run into someone in the playoffs like Nikola Jokic? Give me just a second, guys, because I pulled these stats up. Do you know who led the league in the playoffs last year in total points?
Jokic. Most ever, I think.
Do you know who led the playoffs last year in total rebounds?
Jokic.
Do you know who led the league last year in the playoffs in total assists?
I'm sensing a theme here. Jokic.
Or win shares. Nikola Jokic, last year in the playoffs, first round, he went up against Rudy Gobert. Second round, he played against DeAndre Ayton. Third round, he went up, the conference finals, went up against Anthony Davis. And then in the finals, he played against Bam Adebayo.
Yeah.
we would all say those are some pretty damn good defenders.
Yeah.
This man averaged 30 points, 13 and a half rebounds, 10 assists, a steal, and a block, shooting 55, 46, 80%. Who the hell were you going to go get today that's going to guard Jokic in the playoffs? And if you say Andre Drummond, drop your address so I can come to your house and strangle the shit out of you. Oh, my God. Anthony Davis wasn't available. He got his ass whipped last year by Jokic. Bam Adebayo's not available. He got his ass whipped by Jokic. Like, what are we talking about here? They need to go get a big. What is Jackson Hayes going to stop somebody? The Thunder are number 1 in the West right now. They've beat Jokic 3 out of 4 times. I know Jokic didn't play one of those. Don't come at me. They have a style of play. Like, to say that this dude on TikTok said, go get Vucevic. Go get, I don't know, he said, Kyle Kuzma. What the hell's Kyle Kuzma going to do against Nikola Jokic? Going to get put in the damn rim. That's what he's going to do. Well, Chet can't guard him. Who can? Nobody.
Honestly, Chet does a better job than most.
It pisses me off so bad that these people with these massive platforms just get on the screen, spread their ass cheeks, and talk straight out of their butt. And people just like run with it. Like, watch the games, bro. I'm done.
I agree. No, that
was fantastic.
Let's go to a break before we continue.
Yeah, no, before we do, it's a good point. The centers available on the market, even the best available center on the market is probably going to be a backup center as well. So, like, probably not playing more than 16 to 20 minutes against a Jokic anyways. All right, we'll cut to a break. We'll be back. We'll talk more Gordon Hayward. We are back. I have a question to kick this off. Okay, so we just talked about the 3 guys outgoing to get Hayward along with the 2 picks. The elephant in the room, Gordon Hayward's injury concerns, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we can touch on that here in a second. Before we do, I have a question for y'all, okay? The 3 guys outgoing from OKC, how many total minutes do you think they've played this year?
Total minutes.
Combined.
So, Taylor, let's try to do the math here. I'm going to say Trey Mann has played 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Total. I'm going to say Bertans has played.
Would you give him another 10 because of spot minutes?
Say 70.
Yeah.
So that's 120.
Okay.
Micic, he's been playing pretty consistently for the past 20. Let's say 10 a game, so that's 200. I say we go 300 total minutes. That's my guess.
I like that. And that can be made a little aggressive too. I like that.
You guys actually undershot it quite a bit.
I thought it was aggressive.
No. Totals we have. I'm going to sort the team by minutes. So Bertans, outside of Poku, I guess including Poku, he's a full-time NBA guy. Second fewest minutes at 91.
Bertans was 91. Okay.
Wow.
Next up, third from the bottom, ahead of Poku and Bertans was Trey Mann at 119 through 13 games.
Okay.
Micic was the highest. He's played 30 games, 361 minutes. So,
okay.
Micic, I think, was the guy that we've all said has played better of late. But like, you look at Mann and Bertans, they played 13 and 15 games respectively for like right around 100 minutes. Just not rotation guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gordon Hayward does have injury concerns, like full stop. Has not played since like the day after Christmas. He's the last.
Are you going to have us guess how many minutes he's played?
I am. But the last 4 seasons before this averaged like 49 games. I know some of those were shortened. He's played 25 games this year. How many minutes do you think Gordon Hayward's played
this season?
His last game was December 26th.
Mm-hmm.
So that gave him. Did that give him 25 games?
25.
Is that on the nose?
Yeah, I said that already.
Well done.
Sorry.
Okay. Still.
Yeah. 25 games. I bet he played 20 minutes a game, Taylor.
That's exactly what I just calculated out. That's
I taught history, not math, so I don't know 20 times 25. Is that
500
minutes?
Dot.
Okay.
You're also shooting very low.
Wow.
He played 32 minutes a game before he got hurt.
Holy smokes.
Played 30.
I didn't realize that.
1.5 the year before, 32 the year before, 34 the year before, 33 the year before. Maybe that's why he's hurt all the time. Plays a lot of minutes. So he played a total this season. Let me pull up the totals again. So to recap, the three guys outgoing, which was mostly Micic, 571 minutes. Incoming, Gordon Hayward, the injury-prone guy, 798 minutes. So
wow.
All that to say, yes, he's injury-prone, but like when you zoom out and look at total production, like everyone gets caught up in like points per game. But like at the end of the day, 82-game season, how many points did you score total? Like if you can average 20 points a game for 13 games, but you didn't give your team that many points over the season. He's played more than the three guys outgoing, even with injury concerns. So just to the frame of reference, that whole situation, the guys that were sent out have played less combined than a guy that's quote unquote injury prone and never plays.
And just for reference, in those 25 games he played this year, 14.5 points, basically 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal, shooting 47% from the field, 36% from three, 50% overall. He is a career 37% 3-point shooter. Hasn't been that great in Charlotte. Have a feeling he's going to get more open looks than he's seen in the past 4 years with Oklahoma City.
Unlimited minutes. One thing that I
think limited minutes.
I saw it earlier. Well, more limited minutes than the 32 per game that he was playing. I thought he was 32. Playing 20 also. I could see 20 a night for him. But
I think 20 a night as well.
So he missed 25, played 25 essentially this season. He's missed 114 games since the start of the 2020-2021 season. But again, much more limited role in comparison to what he was playing at Charlotte. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think the 20, especially as we ramp up into the postseason, like 25 minutes per game is.
Oh, see, I think when we get to the playoffs, this guy's playing 30.
Yeah, especially when you don't. Yeah.
I mean, just naturally rotation shortened, so there's going to be.
I have some takes on this. We'll get there.
Yeah. Okay. So, incoming, we addressed the elephant in the room. He is injury prone. When he's not injured, he's still pretty freaking good. I want to talk a little bit about your perception of him as a player when he is healthy, when he is on the court. He's 33 years old, but he still has some value.
There's finally someone on this team, Nick, that is older than Justin and I.
That is a good point. That's a very good point. He's also like 11 years older than Usman Jang, which is freaking nuts. Clemente, I think, tweeted this. He's closer to age with Mark than he is with Shea.
With Shea, yeah.
Pretty nuts. We'll start with you guys. On court production when he's healthy, like what things about Gordon Hayward do you like?
Taylor, I don't know about you. He's kind of does a little bit of everything guy. He can handle, he can shoot, he can pass. He's never I need to get mine type of guy. He plays within the system. He can defend. He's going to be the third biggest rotation guy. Well, maybe, I guess, fourth, because I think Jalen Williams is like Jay Will. Well, I'm talking Jay Will. Both Jalen Williams.
Gotcha.
I think because he's bigger than J Dub. J Dub's like 6'5".
Sorry, yeah, 6'5".
He's 6'7", 225.
Yeah.
He's bigger than Kenrich. He's bigger than Aaron Wiggins. Like, he is going to be the go-to big wing when they need him. Like, if he was on this team a week ago, he would have been the guy guarding Lauri Markkanen the other night. I feel pretty confident about that.
Agreed. That is something that's underrated about his game. Obviously, this has been impacted due to the injuries. We all know about the horrific injury in Boston, and then since then he's battled just some small off and on injuries. But he is a decent enough defender. I'm not going to call him like a great defender, but he uses his size to be able to guard pretty well one-on-one. He struggles some when you get him in like pick and roll and those off-ball situations. But to have his size and strength to be able to battle with some of those wings, the threes and the fours in the league, I think is going to be pretty critical. But the other thing,
Taylor, I think he's going to play small ball 5 some too.
Oh, that's interesting. That's right. I mean, yeah. And I'm curious to get your guys' takes on lineups. But the other thing that stands out to me is the 3-point shooting. 36.9% 3-point shooter on his career, making 36.1% this season on 4.7 attempts per game.
Get him up, baby.
And the catch and shoot. This is from Rylan Stiles tweeted this out after the trade, but 42.7% on catch and shoot. 3-point attempts. Can you imagine what that's going to look like instead of, no offense to LaMelo Ball, even though he hasn't been playing a lot, instead of the Charlotte Hornets guards, it's J-Dub, Shea, sometimes Josh Giddey, whoever it may be, getting him those open looks. Like, that is a huge and critical piece for this team.
Yeah. I wanted Justin to make a get ready to learn small ball center, buddy.
This season, 28% of his threes have come from the corner. He shoots 42% on those.
It's great.
And he'll get a lot of those.
He's gonna get corner threes.
Yeah.
I just think when you think about the way the Thunder play, he fits. Like, to me, he is the older Denny Avdia. And I know people are gonna make fun of me because I'm just like the Denny stan. I get it. But the guy that does a little bit of everything, a little more polished, but also older. So there's like downside to it as well. Previous All-Star, has played on really good teams. I think is going to fit the locker room like a glove. If he stays healthy, huge if.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I tweeted it today, guys. I don't know how you feel about this. I think there's a chance that before the end of the regular season, he's in the starting 5. And I think you're going to have a regular closing 5 now.
That's what I'm more. I could care less who starts the damn game. Like, that's the most overrated thing on earth is who started the game.
Agreed.
I think
that's fair. I think they've got a closing 5 though, for sure.
Agreed.
I agree. And I think the thing that I love the most about that, like specifically to the closing 5, is you have so many options now. Hayward could obviously be that guy, but sometimes in like game 3 of the first round of the playoffs, maybe you go with Isaiah Joe instead.
Yeah.
Like, you have all this versatility
also,
and options.
If you close with Hayward, that allows you to slide J-Dub down a bit. He can guard the 3 instead of the 4. They can put Gordon on the bigger wing, and they can put J-Dub on the smaller wing or on one of the guards if they want. Just allows the lineup to be defensively be way more versatile.
Yeah. A couple things on Gordon from like a on-court perspective. First off, I think he's a top 5 passer on the team instantly.
I'd agree with that.
Positional rebounding, like all the gripes I see on Twitter, like the pushback on why he's a great fit. Someone today tweeted at me and said, these 3 stats have declined 4 straight years. I'm like, yeah, he's 33 years old. That's kind of what happens. It doesn't mean he's
for the Charlotte Hornets.
We're not saying he's an all-star anymore. He's a one-time all-star. We're not saying he's that guy anymore. But he's still a good player. Good positional rebounder, like almost 5 rebounds a game. Solid. In Oklahoma City, that's actually pretty damn phenomenal. I still think he has more juice than people want to give him credit for, and like athleticism. I think if you haven't watched the Hornets or him in a long time, and like you have this perception of injuries and yada yada yada, you might think he's like this hobbled, old guy that can't really get around. He's not Klay Thompson. Like, this dude this year has had some dunks that are like 33 years old doing that. Like, he still has some pop to his game. He's only played, maybe a negative. We talk about experience and like he's been there, and he's played a lot of games. Only 29 playoff games. Not that that's a slight, like that's probably the most on this Thunder roster.
I mean, he had to go up against the Thunder 1.0 for the majority of his career in Utah, right?
Yeah. But only 29 playoff games is kind of surprising to me. I'm going to harp on this a lot. So I'm going to get this out there on the air now, and we're going to talk about it a lot. I think with Shea and Dub pre-existing, with Chet kind of getting better at this facet of the game and bringing in Gordon Hayward is great in the mid-range. Like, when he self-creates for himself, he's really, really good at getting to like that 12 to 16 foot area and like pump faking and stepping through and floater and fall away jumper. With him, Shea, Dub, and Chet, like, this is the mid-range team of the year. And I think as we finish the regular season into the playoffs, like, there's going to be dialogue about this team in Oklahoma City and their mid-range shooting.
Did they, in the way that the Warriors, maybe it's taking it too far, but I don't care. We're getting crazy on this podcast. In the way that the Warriors revolutionized the modern NBA with the 3-point shooting and spacing, are the Thunder bringing the mid-range back and transition back? The other thing to your point, something that I was thinking of when you were saying a lot of those things, like especially the dunks, Nick. Those dunks are coming in transition, and this is also from Ryland. That same tweet.
Not all of them. Not all of them. He actually has some half-court dunks that are like off
drives. That's exciting. 1.264 points per possession in transition, which is pretty incredible, as well as like even more than that, basically 1.4 points per possession on cuts. And like, what have I said on this podcast for forever now? This team is at their best when they're pushing the ball, pushing the pace in transition, and then they use their versatility there. It doesn't have to be getting just easy buckets and getting to the rim in transition. It's also kicking out to open shooters and getting 3-point attempts that way. Gordon Hayward is another one of those guys that can rip the ball off the rim and then be able to push in transition. And that's where I love how he fits his team. And then if he's trailing or something, you have a wide open Gordon Hayward for three. Like, there's so much that he brings to this team that just fits perfectly, with the big disclaimer, so long as he's healthy.
Yeah. With him, like, I think the interesting thing, we talked a lot last night, or maybe I just did, about having a play finisher, like a guy that you've got a lot of table setters, someone like Aaron Wiggins that like he just makes his money off cutting and being a smart player and catch and shoot, being a play finisher. Gordon Hayward can be that. Gordon Hayward can also be like kind of like J-Dub is the guy that when Shea's out, he can create for himself and score. Gordon has some of that too. I don't think Gordon at this stage in his career is J-Dub level of self-creation, generating his own buckets, but he still can, absolutely. So I think he's that perfect guy that can be like the secondary, like we mentioned at the top of the pod. He can also create for himself. I just think he's a great.
He's going to be like probably the fourth option if we're talking about the starting lineup. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and then also, I mean, we've flirted with the talk about like rotations and stuff. Really curious your guys' thoughts on this, because obviously Micic is gone and was starting to get some of those ball handling duties in the second unit alongside Dub. We've seen a little more Josh in that situation. Like, do we see more Gordon and Dub with that second unit? Is it Josh and Gordon? Is it Josh? What is it? Does Josh get moved primarily to that second unit and he's in a more comfortable position being on ball? And maybe that's better for the team as a whole. Like, these are all the thoughts that have been going through my head. I'm curious your all's thoughts on it.
Well, and I think also, Taylor, maybe a question that transitions into that is, who sees the biggest minutes change from these moves today? Like Nick mentioned, you don't have a lot of minutes going out. I don't think Gordon Hayward is going to play as many minutes as he did in Charlotte. But where does the minute fluctuation come in? Do they play a shorter rotation? Like, I could see Gordon taking Kenrich Williams minutes, who I think we all agree has, in comparison to last year, has underperformed. Right? I could see Gordon taking Kenrich Williams minutes. I could see Gordon, I don't know, maybe eating into a little bit of Aaron Wiggins minutes. I could see Cason Wallace minutes going up now that Micic isn't on the team anymore. I think how they balance this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I don't think we'll know for a bit, and I think as we start to think we know, it's all going to change because the playoffs will come around, that it's all going to be mixed up again. 31 games is all we have left, which is kind of crazy. Like, this season has flown by.
It's been a great season. Hey, let me ask you guys this.
Yeah.
Gordon was upgraded to questionable the other night with his calf injury. Didn't play. Makes sense he wouldn't play right before the trade deadline.
Yep.
Zach Lowe on ESPN said that he believes he's heard that Gordon may be ready to play immediately, meaning Saturday against Dallas. Granted, I'm assuming the whole team is in OKC right now. I'm assuming Gordon, if he's not already here at the recording of this podcast, 9:46 p.m. on Thursday, he'll be here tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning, it's my guess. I agree.
They'll get the physical done. They'll get everything taken care of. If he is healthy and cleared to play, they have 3 games before the All-Star break. They have Dallas, and then the second night of a back-to-back back in OKC against the Kings. And then Tuesday, I believe it's Tuesday, out in Orlando. How many total minutes does he play if he's healthy and cleared to go? If he's not healthy and they say, we're going to let the calf rest through the All-Star break and then we'll inject him into the lineup, different story. But if we get practice report tomorrow and Hayward's there and they say, he's ready to go, he's going to play on Saturday, total minutes over the next 3 before the All-Star break, what do you think?
Why don't you set the over-under, please?
You want me to set the over-under? Okay.
Jake is going to be high because he's he was convinced at the beginning that he's going to play Saturday.
I'm
a little more
skeptical.
skeptical.
This is his like Denny coping. This is his older version of Denny.
I think,
That's a great point, Nick.
I would put the over under at 40.5. 13 minutes a game.
Yeah. I was thinking if he doesn't play Saturday, he'd flirt with like the 16 minutes per game on that back-to-back to finish out before All-Star.
And maybe they sit him on a back-to-back. But if they play him all three, I think he's getting close to 15 a game. I would go over.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
I'm gonna go. Okay, this is gonna contradict per usual. I don't think I think he probably could have played days, if not weeks ago. But Charlotte was doing what Charlotte should have, where it's like, if we're going to trade this guy, we're not going to play him. I don't think it's ironic.
Quick aside, Charlotte like maybe had the best. They had a great deadline, and they're finally pivoting in the direction they should have like years ago. I think this is great. Good for Charlotte.
I don't think it's ironic that he became questionable right before the deadline, signaling to teams that he's almost back. That said, there's so many hiccups. Like he's got to get a medical stuff done with both teams before he actually comes. It's a road game. It is a couple days from now. Even if he's in Dallas on Saturday, does he play the second night of the back-to-back like you mentioned? There's just so many factors for me to like sit here and think he plays all three. And even if he plays two, does he hit that 40? I'm going to go under, but I think it's a good number that you put it at.
Just for clarification purposes, Nick, I'm saying if he plays in all three.
Okay. That's
what Vegas works.
Fair disclaimer.
I agree with your disclaimer.
Okay. Thank you.
Nick and I are gambling degenerates.
I'm certainly not. I'm a smart gambler. So
that's what they all say, Nick.
Still a gambler.
So two more big topics with Hayward that I want to touch on. One is the contract, and we'll get to that here in a second. The other is holistically on the day, the big names that were traded, where Hayward kind of falls on the hierarchy of the biggest splash, like the best player. So I know we haven't touched much on like around the league stuff, and we will, assuming we have the time after we finish up the OKC stuff. I think most of our listeners are here for Thunder, so if we don't get to a whole lot of around the league, that's okay. None of the trades today were huge, frankly. Like there was not you could almost say there.
I would argue the biggest one was the Knicks Detroit move.
Yeah, that's my question. And the question is not biggest move, because the Knicks trade was like multiple solid players, individual players. I don't think there was a single like top 4 on any team they went to type trade. I think it was all like borderline starter / bench depth. There was no true like star or top 3 or 4 got traded. I think PJ Washington was a big name. Buddy Hield was a big name. Bojan Bogdanovic was a big name. I guess you could say Alec Burks, since he was in that same trade. Who else were some of the big ones that were top of mind for you guys?
Royce O'Neal to the Suns.
Royce O'Neal,
honorable mention. That's in the same category.
So I think that's all in the same kind of family of player, where it's like, I could see them making a difference on this team, but they're not going to be like the difference on the team. So, and I'm not talking, like, I think if you compared like PJ to Gordon Hayward, there's a reason that PJ fetched a larger package than Gordon, because he's not expiring. He's a younger player. He's going to be on the team longer. He's still going to get
one
better.
of them was starting on that team. One of them wasn't.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Gordon, to be fair, has been a starter like forever. Like I don't think Gordon's ever been like a primary bench player ever in his entire career.
What if he's not when he gets to OKC?
He may not be. All that said, take like today, who is the most impactful player traded that's going to help their team today, assuming they're healthy. You got PJ, you got Buddy, you got Bojan, you got Kelly, you got Gordon. Like, where does he rank? Like, was he the most impactful player traded today? Is my question.
The only other disclaimer is that you didn't mention is we're talking today specifically, and not the trade deadline
OG,
as a
not
whole.
Pascal.
Yes,
exactly.
Exactly.
I would put him 1 or 2. I think Bojan in New York is actually pretty big, especially with New York's injuries right now to OG Anunoby and to Julius Randle. To kind of help them. to help them steady the ship a bit, get some more offense infused in there. I'd put him right there though, especially for what he's going to come in and do for this team. Like, we've talked a lot about how Cason Wallace has the 6th most minutes on this team per game. I think that's about to change.
I would add Buddy Hield just to the same tier, the same conversation, because of the impact player he is. He's younger, and I think he's going to be great for the Sixers. But I think what we're getting at is, like, we're talking about a former all-star still playing at a high level when he's healthy. And the role that he could potentially play, if he is healthy with his team, is significant. We're talking, to your point, Nick, like, Bojan may not be a top 4, top 5 rotation piece for the Knicks. Based off the trades that happened today with the Thunder, Gordon Hayward will be if he's healthy. So
I think Gordon Hayward's closing playoff games for this team.
I think if that's the case,
caveat is so massive.
In 2020 vision, hindsight, etc. But I think, at the end of the season, we could absolutely be saying that Hayward is the biggest player, biggest piece that was traded today.
If you tell me, if another little box on our YouTube page right here popped up, and it was another Nick from like 2.5 months from now, and he hopped on, he said, "Hey guys, I got a time machine. I just got done watching Game 3 of the second round of the Oklahoma City Thunder playoff run. Gordon Hayward just played 35 minutes in the game." That would not surprise me in the slightest. The fact that Nick got the time machine and got, for some reason, with a time machine, decided the best use of his time would be to come back to this podcast, that would surprise me. But Gordon playing 35 minutes in the playoff game would not.
Hey, I think we forgot about one that happened a couple days ago, guys. Steven Adams to the Rockets. I mean,
we said today, buddy.
Yeah, good point.
Hey, I was
just scrolling and saw that.
Let's talk about. Ooh. Nick mentioned the contract in the summer, the Rockets, some Thunder adjacent stuff. Let's jump on all of that, but on the other side of this break. All right, and we're back. Nick, what exactly did you want to talk about? You mentioned the contract earlier for Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, I think the cherry on top of all of this, we've talked about like dream scenarios and Gordon playing 35 minutes in the playoffs and closing lineups and all the things he can do. The potential that he brings to this team, potentially being the best splash trade today. The flip side of that is he's injured. It doesn't work. He comes here. He doesn't look that great. Other guys are getting minutes over him. He's like
living in an apartment while his kids and wife are somewhere else, and he wants to get back to them. Like
there's a lot of scenarios where it doesn't work as well. But the good thing is, even if tomorrow Gordon Hayward injured himself or decided he didn't want to play basketball anymore and just retired, like worst case scenario, he has a $30 plus million expiring deal that sets Oklahoma City up to have a crap ton of cap flexibility in the offseason. And
I think 40 mil plus.
40 mil. That's a number I have in my notes.
Yeah, but you potentially 2 rookies coming in.
True.
All those things. It probably gonna be more like 30. That kind of leads
to the flexibility, right? Because like with that cap space, to what you're getting at, Nick, like after the trade, later in the day, like probably once I got done with work, I jotted down some notes because I didn't want to lose this when we were going through this. And this is the other flip side of the trade. It's really a win-win because we talked so much about the impact Gordon Hayward could have, but if he doesn't, you're not losing anything necessarily. We talked about the players going out, but $40 million in cap space, that doesn't include any players you would potentially be sending out. What you're getting at, Nick, we've talked about Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins. You can use that cap space to negotiate extensions with each of them. 2 players that have big impact on this team this season and moving forward. The other rookies coming in. But the other thing is that's a ton of cap space to be able to go after a big time. Doesn't have to be a superstar, but a role player, a perfect 4-man, a younger Gordon Hayward with all the picks that Presti's put together.
And you're talking a trade.
A trade.
That a trade where you don't need to match salary because you're below the salary.
And I don't want to go on another because we've apparently become the Josh Giddey hater podcast. But like if you decide to move off Josh Giddey, you have that cap space. You can acquire a really good player with those picks in this cap space. Like there's so much opportunity here and so much flexibility that Sam Presti created today. I think that kind of goes unnoticed.
let me riff for a second on that. You go into the offseason, Nick, let's say 42 million in cap space. You could make the trade. You could send out a person or just picks. You don't have to match salary. You could go get somebody that makes 20, 25 mil a year, right? Go get that guy. Then you could use the rest of your cap space to negotiate and extend Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe. I think that's probably a big point.
Theirs wouldn't kick till the final summer, though, or the next summer, though, right?
Well, so I think they can basically, what the Thunder did with Lou, they can like basically opt them out, sign them to a new contract, or let them roll over to unrestricted free agency the next year. If you extend them, I think they can only get up to 120% of their current contract, or like 130%, which is pennies in the NBA. And they're going to be worth more than that, and their agent will say no. But I think you can say, let's forego this last year of your contract and sign you to a new 3-year deal. You can do that with the rest of that cap space. Then you're out of cap space. You can sign 2 rookies with the Rockets and the Utah pick, which we'll talk about those in a second. You can do that over the cap. And then if things work out all right, you could sign Gordon Hayward to like a 2-year, 20 mil while you're over the cap because you have his bird rights. You just traded for his bird rights. They could get a lot of stuff done this summer with cap space, and it's not going to be a free agent acquisition. A, they've never done that. B, I went and looked at the free agent market.
It's garbage.
They're not going to be players
unless they draft Bronny James and LeBron decides to come to OKC. But
so you're saying with Wiggins, it's like they decline the club option and sign him to a new deal instead of extending.
Correct. Yeah. Because if you extend him, I think he can only get 135% of what he's currently making,
right?
Which would be like $3.5 million. And Wiggins' agent's going to say no, obviously. Same with Isaiah Joe.
Something you brought up there, Jacob, is like negotiating
you get both
a
of
new
those
contract.
Guys on like 3 for $30. Get him on like almost like a Kenrich Williams deal.
And you mentioned Hayward, renegotiating with him. I mean, that could be a sign-in trade too. That brings in another player.
And you can do that while you're over the cap.
Right.
A lot of flexibility
options
this summer.
Yeah.
Which is a good summer to have it because the next summer, I mean,
that's when the money matters.
Chet and J-Dub are up the next summer for extensions. They'll have one more year at that low cost, that rookie cost. Mm-hmm. They're both getting maxed.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. I think that, and if for some reason the Thunder was to become this destination that some big name wanted to come to, I'm not talking like a superstar, but like a Dylan Brooks caliber player that's out there that's like, he'd be a good rotation piece. They'd probably want to do a deal that's like a 2-year deal, not a 3-year deal.
Mm-hmm. For sure. We haven't really talked about the Dallas trade much. Thunder got off the second worst pick that they own in this draft. So they now no longer basically own their own pick or the Clippers pick. So you gave up 2 picks that are going to be the late 20s. In return, Nick, they got a swap with Dallas in 2028. That feels pretty significant.
Yeah, it's a gamble, to be clear. Like, it's a gamble that could pay off in a big way. Like,
what are the odds that Dallas's own pick in 2028 is a worse draft pick than 26th? I mean, it's not that high, right?
26 in this upcoming draft too. Like,
yeah. I'd like to say it's a high percent that you get a better pick, but also the Thunder and Mavs could both be top 2 teams in the West, and it's like, oh, well, you got to swap one spot. You know, it's
I think the optimist side of me looks at it. The Mavs don't have any more picks to trade.
That's what I was about to pull up.
The Hayward email just came in. It's official.
Nice. There it is.
The Mavs don't have any more first to trade. Their cupboard is empty. They had to come to the Thunder to get a pick to trade for Gafford today. Like, the cupboard is empty for the Mavs. Luka is up in 2026. That doesn't mean he's going to leave. But their ability to go out and make this team better for the Mavericks is that there's not much ability to do that.
So I just pulled it up, Jacob. When you were saying that, I wanted to pull this up. This is from friend of the podcast, Kirk Henderson. He actually tweeted this out this afternoon. I found it interesting. 2024, the Mavericks owe the Knicks a top 10 protected pick. 2027, they owe Charlotte a top 2 protected first round pick. 2028, the pick swap that we just talked about with OKC. 29, the Nets, an unprotected first round pick. And in 2030, a pick swap with San Antonio. Their assets to improve this team is very limited. Not to mention that the year before, the Thunder pick swap would potentially convey, if you want to call it that, it becomes effective. Luka Doncic will be a free agent the year prior. Like, there's a lot that could happen between then and now.
Also, I think if the Luka thing, good or bad, is going to happen well before 2028. It's either they're going to win titles and he's going to be there his whole career, or it ain't going to work and he's going to be gone by 2026.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think 2028.
And 2028 is so far away. We have no clue what the league is going to look like then.
Dude,
as far as a value move, you traded an asset that you know is not going to be a great asset.
Yeah.
For the possibility of getting a really good asset and a really, really high possibility of getting an asset that's at least better than what you sent out.
Yeah.
Right. That's the other thing.
Though it's technically a -1 in the total pick counter. Not that they need more picks, because it would be a swap. Like you could move up 10 spots. So you're actually trading a tangible pick for the opportunity to move up. So your number of picks actually went down. Not that I'm against it, because I'm not. Like, I think you
we've kind of seen them going this route there. They're going, Sam got a shitload of quantity and now is slowly turning that quantity into quality
or potential.
And that's awesome.
And look, like Nick and I have kind of pushed back on the whole narrative, because inevitably at the end of this season, we're going to be talking about, well, actually, that maybe this draft in 24 isn't nearly as bad as everybody thought. That will happen. But that being said, and what's considered a weak overall draft, even if you end up with the same caliber pick in the late 20s in 2028, when this team is hopefully at their peak and still competing for championships, like, that's still a fantastic asset to have.
Totally agree. Let's talk a little bit of things that are like Thunder adjacent. I think the first one for me, guys, is the Houston Rockets did not make a move today. They are currently sitting at, what's their record?
Bad. 3 games below 500, I think.
3 or 4. Fred VanVleet is out. As of 2 days ago, he's expected to be out at least another week. He's a big component of theirs. They made no moves to get better this season, and the Thunder own their top 4 protected pick. I feel pretty good about the Thunder getting a decent pick from the Rockets this year. With all that's kind of going on, like right now, I think you'd have to bet that the Rockets don't make the play-in, right?
Yeah, it's going to be close, but even then,
it's not like it's. I wouldn't say it's like likely they're not. Like they're within like what, a game and a half of being the 10 seed. I guess like they're out of it
with the Jazz
for sure.
And the Jazz just traded.
That's another
topic. Also adjacent. Yeah,
the Thunder own the Jazz's top 10 protected pick this year. The Jazz have been very good recently, but they sold today, guys. Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji out the door. Coming in from Toronto was, who'd they get from Toronto?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember now.
That deal was Kira Lewis, Otto Porter, and a first.
That's right. They also sold on Simone Fontecchio. They've traded some big time rotation pieces for them. I don't know. Does that signal they're trying to tank and keep their pick? I don't think so. I think they were just loading up on maybe like younger talent, whatever they got off of guys that were expiring this year. But that's something interesting to monitor. Will the Thunder keep that pick or not? And then you look at the top of the West in total. Of the top 4, there's only one other team in that logjam that made a trade. Well, I guess technically the Clippers sent cash to Denver for the rights to somebody. But the only other tangible trade was Minnesota getting Monty Morris,
who's also solid.
Yes, very good pickup.
Great pickup.
Yeah.
The Suns made a move The Kings did not make a move. I mean, we'll see what the Dallas moves end up doing. But when you look at the top of the West, I feel like you got to feel pretty good about the Thunder in the sense of the picks that they do have coming in from Houston and Utah. And I think of the top 4, they're the team that got the most, it's weird English, the most better today.
The best?
Like of the top 4, they got better than anybody else.
Okay.
Right.
Would you guys agree with that? Or is the Monte Morris move more substantial for Minnesota than the Gordon Hayward is for Oklahoma City?
I mean, if we're saying that Gordon Hayward, going back to earlier in the podcast, was arguably the best player traded.
Yeah, we didn't even mention
today.
Monte Morris.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he was
yesterday, but still, I mean, it's probably the same tier of trade. And again, even if it doesn't work out, it's not like, I mean, the Thunder didn't lose any depth pieces that's going to affect how they've been playing. I think that's a very fair argument. I think I agree.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that Gordon Hayward is more significant than, like, productivity wise, certainly more impactful when healthy. That's not really how the NBA works. It's not like this guy averages more points, rebounds, and assists, so he elevates his team more.
For sure.
It's hard to say. Like, I also didn't view Minnesota as this team that, like, had this huge void at backup point guard. Like, as soon as that trade went down, like, all the national people were like, "Oh, this addresses a concern for Minnesota." Like I didn't watch that team and think, like, man, they just need that backup point guard.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know.
Thunder still have 2 open. Excuse me. Thunder still have 2 open roster spots.
I was going to mention that.
What
Maybe that's how we
those?
end. I think a 2-way guy gets converted. And I could see it being Lindy again. I could see it being Keontae. I could see it being both. Keontae makes a lot of sense because he was a draft pick in this most recent draft. He's been playing really well in the G League, even if he has not gotten a ton of burn with the Thunder this season. I'd probably lean that way. But I'm curious your all's thoughts. Like, do they just keep an open roster spot? Do they convert both Lindy and Keontae? Or do they actually go after somebody in the buyout market? And that's where I'm like a little skeptical, even though there's some like flashy names out there.
I don't see anybody on the buyout market that they would go get who would like be a rotation piece. I just don't see it.
Spencer Dinwiddie, Robin Lopez, Killian Hayes,
Danilo Gallinari.
Dude, that's the one that's kind of fun.
I do think it's interesting though that the new CBA rule disqualifies certain teams at certain thresholds to sign guys that were making more than 12 mil or whatever before being bought out. Because a lot of those teams are the teams that you'd be like, yep, that guy's going there, but he can't. I think Dinwiddie's kind of down to Mavs Lakers. He's not a real option. Robin Lopez is like fun. He's just interesting, entertaining guy, but like, I don't think he's good at basketball anymore. Like he'd be a welcome big body for a few minutes a game and like spot
Thaddeus
situations.
Young, Nick? Does Thaddeus Young do anything for you?
I said Thad Young as a trade target on our pod.
I wouldn't hate that.
I mean, I also think he's not a great basketball player anymore, but he's a big body if you need it for whatever reason.
Speaking of big bodies, Roddy got traded today.
Roddy did.
Roddy, yada.
I would not be surprised. So I do think they will elevate one of their 2-way guys. I would think it's Keontae. I think
it's Keontae as well.
Lindy's been up, down, cut. Like it's too much. I could see Keontae. I think they'd be okay going into the playoffs with 14 guys. Like I don't think they necessarily like feel the need to get up to 15. Like there's a whole lot of scenarios where it's probably better to be flexible. I wouldn't be shocked if there's some G leaguer out there that Sam Presti really likes, and this could be directly signing him to the roster or elevating Keontae and then bringing this new guy into the 2-way. I wouldn't be shocked if there's some guy that Presti likes that he could sign to a 2-way on from a different G League team that is a big that could play his, NBA level of serve. He could play every night the rest of the season. He's not going to hit his 50 games. I think we see something like that.
Maybe some 10 days with that open roster spot, a rotation of players.
Could be there's a lot of things you could do. I just think it's It's too early to say. Like I don't think it's. I mean, I think you have 2 weeks to get it back up to 14. So I don't expect anything to happen like tomorrow. It could happen freaking before you get off this podcast, but I don't think it's going to be an immediate thing.
Jacob's muted.
Sorry. Is that all for us, guys?
Covered a lot of ground.
So I'm going to ask a question, maybe to close this off here. The Thunder, I'm assuming everybody believes, is a better team today than they were yesterday. Yes?
Is that the question? Yes.
Question. Okay.
That's a question, not the question, right?
It's not the question.
Okay.
So how many games, it's not going to be like a number 10, but like how many games better in the regular season do you think this team is? Like if you were a Vegas odds maker, because the win totals are going to fluctuate now. Let's say it was, I don't know what it actually is. Let's say the win total was 53 coming into the day. What is it now? Does it move?
55.
Oh.
Game and a half.
I don't think it really moves. I was going to pull up.
I was doing the math today. Let me pull it back up to make sure. Again, not a math teacher. Don't have a calculator in front of me, so don't quote me on this. I was told there would be no math. Thunder currently 35-16. That is 40. How many games is that? 51. Mm-hmm. So there's 31 left.
Mm-hmm.
All they have to do is go 15-16 to hit 50 wins.
Yeah.
They're not going 15-16. Like they're going to be better than that, right? Like,
yeah.
Even without Gordon Hayward.
If they went, I mean, they could go 21-10 and be at 56 wins.
Yeah.
That's insane.
That's absolutely insane.
I had them as a 41-win team for the record.
I felt bold preseason, and I was saying like 44, 45. They're going to win like 55.
Yeah. It's nuts.
They're going to go 10 plus over their preseason over-under.
Yeah.
And then enter the draft with 2 lottery picks, 40 million cap space, and have everyone left on their team.
Yeah. It's
all their additional assets.
They're very well set up. That's what happens when you're patient. Last thing I'll say, to piggyback on Jacob's long rant earlier about the backup big or the center. It's not as simple as let's go trade for this big who fills the rebounding void. It's a push-pull. It's a give-get. You go get a guy, unless you're getting like the perfect glove guy that he's going to cost you 3-4 firsts. Unless you go get the perfect guy, you're probably bringing in a Drummond or a Capella or a Gafford or you name it. One of those like known to be rebounders. When you play those guys big minutes, when you think it's going to like fix the rebound problem, it's also a detriment to the other shit you do really, really well.
100%.
Can't play as fast. Your floor spacing's not as good. Your
driving kick game is screwed.
Driving kick, your defense may go down in the case of some of those guys. So it's not as simple as just like trade for a rebounder, play him 25 minutes a night. Your rebound issues are fixed. Oh, then all of a sudden your pace is down and your efficiency is down and your space. It's not that simple. There are guys out there, to be clear, that can rebound and also play the perfect style in OKC. But those are the guys that cost multiple first-round picks, and it's too premature to do that.
Love it.
Agreed.
Nick, take us out of here.
Let's get home.
Really quick. Who won the trade deadline?
The Knicks.
The
Knicks. That's my answer.
Who lost?
Bing bong, baby.
Who lost?
The
Detroit?
Raptors or the Pistons? I'm torn on both.
What the hell is Detroit doing?
I don't know what Detroit is doing. Hey, the Lakers didn't make a trade, but that's because who doesn't want to be in Southern California?
And they're going to trade their 3 firsts in the offseason to get a superstar. Big 3.
Trae Young and Donovan Mitchell.
That's right.
They're both coming.
Yeah, Trae Young's apparently available now. You hear?
Yeah. How convenient. Right after the trade deadline.
I'm saying.
Someone in the chat also says Chicago. I kind of agree with that. I don't know what the hell Chicago's
doing. It's a good one, too.
That's actually maybe the actual loser. By not doing anything, they are the loser.
Also, please don't tweet at us and say the Thunder should get Killian Hayes or James Bouknight.
You were the biggest Killian Hayes guy in the draft process, besides Kevin O'Connor. You're the biggest Killian Hayes guy.
Yeah, I was kind of high on Killian, but that was the Denny draft.
It was also the Halliburton draft. I think you were high on him too.
Oh yeah, I have good draft takes from time to time. You guys do all this analysis. I'm just a vibes dude.
Oh gosh, that'll get you far. Well, we will be back with you guys over the weekend. The Thunder have a back-to-back on Saturday afternoon. I think it's a Sunday afternoon. Like it's a 2 p.m.
Back-to-back,
both
2
days,
p.m.s.
24 hours.
Super Bowl. So yeah,
you can't call that a Sega Baba because it's not the second night of a back-to-back. It's the second afternoon of a back-to-back. So what do you call that? Is it still a Sega Baba?
Sega Baba is the second game of a back-to-back. Say SE second game GA back Sega Baba.
It still counts. It still counts. Okay, so still a Sega Baba. We'll be back with you guys Sunday night.
The second night of a back-to-back could be Say Ni Baba. If it was second afternoon of a back-to-back, it'd be Siyaf Baba. I can't go anymore. It's late. Right. I'm tired. I don't know what I'm saying.
That's a Thunder. We'll be back with you on Sunday. Hopefully we have our first look at Mr. Gordon Hayward. Shortly after that, we have the All-Star break. Much needed rest for these guys. Isaiah Joe is snubbed from the 3-point shootout. But we will have, 5 representatives there? We got 3 rising stars, Keontae in the G League game, Shea in the All-Star game. Lots to watch for. We'll have coverage, boots on the ground. Before then, though, 3 more games. That's it, right? 3 more games?
3 more games.
3 more games. Got you guys covered, and we'll see you on Sunday.